Hello everyone, it's Miss Tanya, and today we are going to make meatloaf. So what you need for meatloaf is obviously some ground meat. To make it healthier, you can use ground turkey, and if you don't like ground turkey by itself, you can combine ground beef with turkey. My family likes all beef, so we try to buy the leanest beef that we can. This one that we found is 90% lean and 10% fat. It does mean it costs a little bit more, but I'm not paying for the fat that's going to shrink the meat down. So I think it's a good investment. But if you have something that's higher in fat, it just means that you have to skim more fat off of your meatloaf or put it on a tray so all the fat drops underneath the meatloaf. So, the first thing we're going to start with is our ground beef. I'm making this for my family, and I have quite a few people in my house. Of course, I start by washing my hands. Always wash your hands, and remember, we're washing them very thoroughly. Fronts, backs, in-betweens, fingernails, up to the wrists if you can. So I just drop all that in. Have another one. My husband really likes meatloaf. My children are adults now. They don't absolutely love meatloaf, but this is one of the dishes that feeds a good number of people. So I'm probably going to have meatloaf with mashed potatoes and a nice vegetable. Okay. So all of the ground beef is in here. I've taken my rings off because meatloaf is something I like to kind of put my hands in. So if you are going to do that, make sure that you take off your rings. I used about 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds of beef, ground beef, and I'm using 2 eggs. And remember, I always taught you to separate your eggs first so that you can beat them together. And then pour them into whatever you're making. So that's well beaten. Put it in there. This is a dish that you have to be very careful and very clean about because raw eggs and raw meat is not especially safe. So I'm going to wash my hands. So remember, you have to wash them really well. That's my fingernails. You have to wash each finger. Insides, the backs, up to the wrists. At least. Okay? Now we're going to come back and we're going to use breadcrumbs. I love Italian breadcrumbs because they already have seasoning in them. But if you don't have Italian flavored ones, plain ones are fine. Or you can even make your own breadcrumbs. Toast up bread. I've seen people just take regular bread, make it really small. So I'm going to put a 1/2 cup of breadcrumbs in there. And if you have onion soup mix, you can pour onion soup mix in there. Today, I do not have onion soup mix, so I am using cream of mushroom soup. I already washed my can. I always wash the top of my cans and the sides. Sometimes cans are a little dirty. Put a little cream of mushroom soup in there, or you can use the onion soup. This makes a nice moist meatloaf, especially if you're using ground turkey or you're using ground beef that doesn't have a lot of fat in it. Then I'm going to put in all of my seasonings. So remember, I think a lot of my recipes, I like to use the same seasonings. They're my basic seasonings. So this is granulated onion. It could be powdered onion. I like it a lot, so I'm going to put 2 tablespoons in there. Then I have ground garlic powder. I'm going to put 1 tablespoon of that in there. I have Italian seasoning, but typically I make my own Italian seasoning by putting basil in there and oregano. So I'm going to put a tablespoon of this in here. The more herbs and spices you use in a recipe, the less salt you have to use. Some ground pepper. I'm going to use a teaspoon of this. And finally, a little bit of salt. And for the salt, I'm going to use 1/2 of a teaspoon. Okay. So it's all mixed up in our bowl. Now this is one of my favorite parts. But again, you have to have nice clean hands, and this is something that your parent should do. This is the fun part. So I just take a few minutes, I smush it. Is that a real word? I don't know. But I smush it all together, get everything mixed nicely. You don't want to play with it, because if you play with it, it makes the meat too tough. So I'm just going to fold it all in, like so. And I've already preheated my oven to 350 degrees. And I'm going to bake it for an hour. So now you can put your meatloaf in a loaf pan like this, or you can just take it and make a loaf and put it on like a grate and bake it. Did you know this is similar to making meatballs? Pretty similar ingredients. So like I said, I'm going to put this all in here. Then we're going to bake it at 350 degrees for at least an hour. I have a lot of meat in there, so it might be a little longer. And then I'll take a picture and let you see what it looks like. All right, thanks for joining me.